Yes, guys, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boy Dave, and as you can see, it's your weekly upload with your boy Sean from Spurs Talk Show. Shawnee, how you keeping, my man?
Good, mate. Very hot. Very hot. It's too hot for me. A big guy like me doesn't like the heat, but I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Sean, I'm the exact same. It's like putting ice cream out in a bucket in the heat, right? You just absolutely melt, my man. I'm absolutely down with this heat. It's been roasting here the last 2 days. I think I need to emigrate to Greenland or somewhere like that, lad. But look, we do have we have a lot to talk about. I didn't think there'd be so much to talk about today, but there is. So let's get into it, straight into it. The club obviously have sold Sanchez out to Galatasaray for a rumoured 9 million fee. Very, very interesting. The fact that they sort of didn't do any business towards the end of deadline day, especially at centre-back, despite Ange Postecoglou calling for one even after we signed Mickey van der Ven. First of all, Sean, before we get into Ashley Phillips being his replacement and Dyer still being ousted from the squad, what's your thoughts on the club choosing to sell Sanchez after the window's closed and leaving ourselves short?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, mate. Obviously, for me, my irritation levels depend on whether or not there was truth to the idea that Tottenham turned down a bid that was higher from Rennes and they ended up accepting from Galatasaray after the window. I can't figure out the logic behind that if it's true, but people on Twitter and some ITKs are suggesting that is the case. If it is, then it's bonkers. I don't understand why the club would have rejected one within the time frame and then accepted a lower one after the time's gone, unless they were kind of conspiracy hat on here, looking for a reason to not have to replace, which I find a little bit too much of a stretch. So I'm going to lean into Occam's razor and believe that just wasn't the case. That the offer from Rennes either was turned down by something else, by Sanchez, or it was of the same level or lower level. I don't know, whatever. But to me, getting back to the point, he has gone. I wish him well. I didn't like the fact that how he was treated towards the end by when he was booed and stuff. But at the same time, I do think he had opportunities to leave and was kind of digging his heels in for the last 18 months. So a little bit of friction, I think, between the player and the club. But for me, in terms of the timing, I think that there's a lot of risk we open ourselves up to potential nightmares. It could be in a week's time, it could be in this international break, or it could be in November or any time in between. We obviously have to go and find someone in the January window. So it's all about whether or not Lady Luck is going to shine on us. And if it does, then I think it will prove to be, a decent piece of business to have got him out. One of the final pieces of Deadwood to need to be shifted on. There's still a few more, but we're on, getting in the right direction. However, I just feel like, when you leave your entire season up to fate or destiny when it comes to injuries, then it's difficult to think it's a perfect situation to be in. And I think that's where we find ourselves. If one injury to either of those two players, and we are either going to go in a direction that we're bringing in a kid who none of us have really seen play, as much as we might look at him and think he's a man, we don't really know what level he's at. And if we don't use him, then we'll go in a different direction to a guy that nobody wants at the club. So it's not perfect for sure.
Look, for me, I think it stinks of incompetency, if you want me to be brutally honest. I think the club have had multiple opportunities to be able to get these guys gone off the books, but also replace them in the transfer window. You go back as far back as when Ange Postecoglou was first interviewed for the job. He would have had a full plan of the way he wants to play, the style of play, etc., the system, but also what players he can and can't use. So the club would have been well aware back then when he first interviewed for the job what business they needed to do for this guy. Then also he had a transfer meeting before he even officially started on the 1st of July. Again, he would have put to them exactly what he wants out and what he wants in. And then, even deadline day, Ange Postecoglou would have said, look, I need another centre-back in here. And he said it after the Mickey van der Ven. So on this one, I do feel like the club have let Ange Postecoglou down. I think he's sticking to his beliefs by letting him go 100%. And I think, look, it's a huge risk. But, what's the point of sticking with someone like Sanchez, who has cost us a lot of games at this football club over the last 3 years, but also, again, Tuesday night under Ange Postecoglou against Fulham, although he stepped up to take a penalty, fair play to him. His performance was absolutely shocking all night long. He was at fault for the first goal, and he kept on passing the ball out over the sideline for a throw and straight back to the opposition anytime he went to pass down the right-hand side. So it would have well known that Ange Postecoglou would have wanted the centre back in there. Hence the links to Lloyd Kelly, Adarabioyo, Trevor Shalova, all just on deadline day. They would have known. So for me, I think, there's probably already some sort of rift going on there, if you want me to be brutally honest. If I'm looking at things from a logical perspective on the outside, Ange's asked for this, the club haven't delivered, but Ange Postecoglou is still sanctioning, yep, get him gone, he's not part of my plans, I don't want him. So look, it stinks of absolute incompetency to me, the fact that they've left us in this situation, because you're right, Sean, one injury, even a suspension, you're entering the realm of unknown, and it could come back to your detriment, right? It could halt all progress that we are making. So I just think it's very, very poor planning by the football club, and I think they've been left with egg on their face. But Sean, Ashley Phillips.
Let me just counter on that. In terms of like some of these deals, we were trying to get the players out. There was obviously intention to bring new players in, but at least four players in the club had offers all throughout the summer and turned them all down. Davinson Sanchez being one, Eric Dyer, Hugo Lloris, Ndombele. Every single time that there was an agreed offer that was ready to go, the player said no. I don't understand what the club is supposed to do in the situation where they have done everything they can, but the players dug their heels in. There's three parties that are involved in a transfer. There's the buying club, the selling club, and the player, right? And if the player says no, it doesn't matter if the two clubs come to agreement. The only option that you have is to tear up contracts, which I think a lot of people were throwing this idea around, primarily because Paul O'Keefe said that was what the plan was earlier on in the summer, and then backtracked on his statement later on in the summer when it didn't materialize. But I think people oversimplify the process of tearing up contracts. First of all, the player doesn't have to accept the contract being torn up. It's got to be through mutual consent.
Yeah.
Second of all, even if there was an improvement or an agreement in place to do it, you have to pay, or if you are going to come to agreement to a player that doesn't want, then they can force you to pay everything up front, which then takes away all your ability to then spend the money elsewhere. And thirdly, maybe you can make the adjustment for one player. I personally am of the belief that a lot of these players got together almost like in a cabal or in cahoots with each other and said, we've got the leverage here. He wants us out. Levy wants us out. The club want us all gone. Let's not go. And let's wait for them to tear up contracts. And once they tear one up, they'll set the precedent and we can all get our contracts torn up and paid out. Then we can all move on, get a nice signing bonus somewhere else, plus our salary. It's a perfect way for us to get maximum payout. Otherwise, I don't understand why people like Hugo Lloris turned down every single offer. I don't understand why Ndombele did. And Davinson Sanchez, to me, turning down 3 deals over the last 18 months, only to wait until the window closes to accept one. I think the whole thing to me doesn't stink of incompetence on the behalf of the club. It stinks of some sort of collusion on behalf of the players that are trying to force the situation. And I don't know what the club can do if they've already got too many players mentioned. To tear up all of their contracts means that you have no budget left to buy your replacement anyway.
Look, on that, I think there's a number of things the club could have done. They know Eric Dyer and Hugo Lloris have 1 year left on their contract. So it ain't going to be that detrimental for the club to be able to agree a fee to be able to clear them guys off. They could have done that at the start of the transfer window. They chose not to. The reason why they're still sitting here today is because Daniel Levy sees value in them where others don't. A lot of other clubs don't. He held out all this transfer window to try and offload them. Now he's holding out for the Turkey deadline. I have no doubt he'll hold out for the Saudi Arabia deadline as well. I do get your point, and I do get what you're saying, Sean, that the club did accept offers, this, that, and the other. But then, okay, that's where the club need to get tough on these guys. There's no consequences. There's no sort of sanctions or anything for it either. And for me, I think they could have took the opportunity to at least pay off Eric Dyer and Hugo Lloris with 1 year left on the contract for sure. But also, with the whole Harry Kane thing all summer, no players bigger than the club. Okay, then why are we letting these players hold the club to ransom. Why are they acting bigger than the football club? Should not tolerate it as fans, nor should we find it acceptable. And I think the club need to get tough on it, and they should have been more proactive about it. If you want me to be brutally honest,
I hear you. I hear you on like in the philosophical argument. I just don't know what that means in practicality. As I said, the only real option that you have when you signed a contract, there's contract law. Like the players are entitled to their money, absent some gross negligence or gross misconduct or whatever, where the players can then be terminated, in line with what we've seen with certain other players in the past elsewhere. I don't know what they can do apart from tear the contract up. And like I say, for me personally, and I'm speculating, so I could be well wrong here, but the fact that Hugo Lloris turned down every single offer and the excuses that were made as to why he turned them down, or I didn't have enough time to listen to the project for Nice and Newcastle didn't really feel right. But what were you hoping to happen? What were you hoping to happen when you yourself have turned down X, Y, Z? You turned down Lazio, you turned down Inter, you turn them all down all the way through the window. You wait until the deadline day, you get an offer, and then your excuse for not signing it is that you don't have enough time to really figure it out. Like that's what happens on deadline day. So to me, it comes across to me like players like Hugo Lloris had no intention of leaving. They wanted their contract to be torn up. They still do. And Daniel Levy, like, as far as you're saying, like they could have come to an agreement earlier on in the summer, maybe they could have done, right? But that's the thing, that the argument against doing that is when you've got 5 players that you want out of the club, that if you tear one up, the rest of them all think that they're going to get theirs torn up and they're going to then change their behavior and dig their heels in too. And whilst I also acknowledge, by the way, that Daniel Levy is not the perfect guy to figure out the correct process for that particular sort of situation, because he looks at every negotiation as a zero-sum game where someone has to win, someone has to lose. And so he is not the guy that you want that's going to try and meet someone in the middle in that world. He's going to think the way I'm probably thinking about what Lloris's intentions were, what Sanchez's intentions were, and then say, well, I'm not going to budge. I'm not going to show any weakness. I can't do that. I'm Daniel Levy. I have to win this. So if it means that those players are going to sit on their backsides for the next 4 or 5 months, then so be it. So it's not perfect, but I don't think it's quite as black and white as saying that the club are guilty of incompetence.
See, this is the knock-on effect where we're now going into a season light at centre back, light in maybe a couple of other areas, and these guys have stopped us from sort of, giving ourselves the best chance with what we see as the project going forward. We're letting guys from the old regime still hold this football club back, still hold this club to ransom. Whereas if we would have acted sooner and Daniel Levy would have waited up, we could have got them out and we could have got more players in here before the end of deadline day. The reason why we didn't is because Daniel Levy was waiting for the last moment to see if these guys would leave on deadline day. And it's a huge risk and a huge gamble to pay. And I think he lost, if you want me to be brutally honest.
Well, Daniel
Levy's first priority is looking after this football club financially and on the football pitch. Now, we've gone with financially for quite some time, but for this one, he should have weighed it up. There's plenty of lost revenue, lost competition earnings also. All your sponsors, them contracts get renegotiated depending on European football, not depending on European football. So the club have lost a lot of money already having these guys hanging around. Yeah. And we're still feeling the impact of it in terms of now on the football pitch because we refuse to let them go and bring in more players. I get it would have cost the club a bit of money, but like I keep saying, at some time you have to weigh up cost over succession or cost over
cost benefit
moving forward. And I think Daniel Levy weighed it up. I think he went with cost, and I think it's backfired.
Yeah, listen, it's a reasonable take. I completely see why you come into that conclusion. And I think, like I said, I do think that Daniel Levy probably not the right guy to be making the decision on that particular front, because his ego and his stubbornness in and of itself is going to create an issue. There are other clubs that don't think that way, that haven't thought that way in the past. And, sometimes you take short-term pain for long-term gain. I completely get why you're landing on the situation. I just think that to call it incompetence, gross incompetence or gross negligence, which a lot of people are, not just like, I know you said it as well, but loads of people are saying it on Twitter. I think it's a bit of I think he took a gamble. I think it was a game of chicken, a game of like who's gonna blink first or whatever.
Sure.
And he was hoping that one of these guys was going to look at the situation and think, I don't want to spend the next 4 or 5 months or year training with the kids.
Mm.
He didn't blink, but at least with regards some of these people, they haven't blinked either. He obviously had the get out of jail with regards the Turkey window and the Saudi Arabian window. And I don't think it matters for any other player other than Sanchez. I think it was a fine tactic to do with Ndombele. It was a fine tactic to do with Hugo Lloris and possibly even Eric Dyer. But I agree with you that with regards Davinson Sanchez, he, as much as he is also not good enough for the football club, he was the best of the rest that we had. So if you couldn't have anyone new coming in, you probably needed him to stay. And that's why I sit there and think it's a huge risk, and I land at the same place where you are. And I think that it's too much of a risk, but we'll have to wait and see. If Lady Luck does shine on us and Romero and Van der Ven stay injury free, then we'll look back in 4 months and say, well, we've got one of the Deadwood out, right? And obviously Ndombele's, maybe we'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, look, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's incompetence. I think it was a gamble that didn't pay off, but I think it was one that could have gone either way, and it's just landed the way it has.
Well, people tuning in right now, in the comment section below, let us know: is it gross incompetence, or what you say? What you saying it is, Shawnee?
I just think it's a gamble that that possibly will come back to bite us. But I don't know. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that the only person responsible for the situation we find ourselves in is the club. I think the players are equally responsible, if not more responsible, for the situation, and that's just the way it is.
Oh, look, I just on that quickly, I agree with you. I want to say this quickly. These players don't escape either. You got Eric Dyer, who wants his ashes buried underneath Tottenham. He loves it that much, but yet can't move on so that the club can progress. Hugo Lloris said he wanted gone at the end of last season. He's still here. So, them players don't escape criticism whatsoever either. But Sean, what do you think of Ange Postecoglou's decision to promote Ashley Phillips to the first team as third choice centre back? Dyer's been overlooked again. We'll start with the Ashley Phillips decision. What do you make of him being chosen sort of over someone like Eric Dyer?
Do you know what, mate? So I was on Sav's show about, I don't know, a month ago. But it was just before the Man United game. And I think I showed you the tweet yesterday, right? But I was on Sav's show, and Sava and everyone on the panel was like, of course you pick Ashley Phillips over Eric Dyer. And I was like, wait, what? Hang on a second. None of us like Eric Dyer. That's absolutely fine. Right? None of us want him at the club. That's absolutely fine. But none of you have really seen Ash Phillips. Right? Don't pretend. Please don't tell me that of the 1,700 minutes of professional football that this kid has ever played, the vast majority being the England under 17, under 18, or Blackburn under 21 reserve team. Please don't tell me that you sit there and watch Blackburn under 21s play football. How can you possibly say that you would rather have Eric Dyer, or rather have someone you've never seen play over Eric Dyer? And the kind of consensus was, well, we've seen Eric Dyer. We know how bad he is. I'd rather take the gamble. And I understand the point. So we put it to a poll, and the poll was 90% in favor of Ash Phillips. So I was in the mud. I was like, I can't believe this. This is ridiculous. So then I went to Twitter, where I believed that there might be a bit more what I thought would be common sense. Twitter, common sense, not necessarily two things you'd say. I put it out there, and it was a little bit more balanced, but ultimately still 75% or something of the people asked. There was a lot of people that responded, said that they would prefer Ash Phillips. And so I was sitting there going, I just don't get it. Like, he's not that terrible a centre-back. Like, he's not that bad. And like, Eric Dyer would play more games for Blackburn Rovers in the Championship last season than Ash Phillips. Like, come on, let's have a little bit of common sense here. But you know what? I think that the deciding factor is if Ange Postecoglou who has seen him train, who has seen him play, who has got a better insight, if he has landed on that opinion that he would rather have Ash Phillips come off the bench than Eric Dyer, then I'm happy to be in the mud. Like I'm like clearly, like the popular opinion was right because Ange Postecoglou shares it, and that's to me is the defining factor. If Ange is up for it, I back Ange 100% all the way. If he wanted Brennan Johnson, even though I wasn't that over the top with it, I'm backing him. I back Brennan. If he wants to play Sonny through the middle and or Richie on the left, whatever, I'll back him. And with Ash Phillips, if he believes that Ash Phillips is our best of the rest, best backup centre-back, then I'll get behind it. Physically, he's got no issue. His height, his strength, his speed, all of that looks like a man. It's just whether or not he has the technicalities and the experience to get the job done under pressure. and we will see. Because I think there will be a moment in the next 4 months when Ash Phillips will have to play. Romero has an injury-prone track record. Not sure if Van der Ven does, but so we'll see. We'll see what happens, and I really, really hope that he absolutely smashes it. What's your take?
Do you know what, Sean? For me, I absolutely love the decision. Look, anyone that's been watching me for the last few years has heard me call for some of these youngsters to be given an opportunity rather than try the same thing and get expecting different results. It's insanity, right? I called way back then, just get rid of Ben Davies, bring up Dennis Sirkin, get rid of some of these guys and start bringing up some other guys. For me, I'm absolutely over the moon that Ange Postecoglou has made this decision, if you want me to be brutally honest. Dyer has had his chance since Toby and Jan left for 3 years. And over the 3 years, under 3 different managers, he keeps making mistakes that leads him to being dropped from the team eventually. And then he comes out and he blames managers and blames everyone else for his mistakes. A good leader takes accountability. Eric Dyer always failed to do that in the press. Davinson Sanchez, another one, just not good enough. He's been here since before Toby and Jan retired. He was third in line. And the fact that Dyer came in and started ahead of him, was moved from centre midfield to centre back, doesn't exactly say a lot about what managers think about Davinson Sanchez. And then again, Postecoglou gave the guy a chance Tuesday night, and he just let everybody down. And I come back to what Antonio Conte says. And whether people like Conte or his management or not, this one thing you can't argue with. These players cannot play under pressure, or nor do they want to. And you look at a lot of them preseason, right? They took to the system fine, playing ball, no problem whatsoever. All of a sudden, Ange Postecoglou goes, okay, these guys, they've done it in preseason. Let's give them a go in a game that means something, in the Carabao Cup game. And then they just reverted back to type because there's pressure on the game. It's win or lose. But for me, you look at someone like Sanchez and even Dyer. I'm going to throw the two of them in there. They've been a part of a lot of the cup exits away from home over the last, 3 to 4 years. You go back, you look at all the ones we've gone out away from home, even the couple that have been at home. They've all been a part of the back line. And for me, it doesn't matter whether it's been NS Moura or whether it's been Nottingham Forest. They cannot deliver. And for me, I'm absolutely over the moon. Ange Postecoglou has made this decision because I've been at the point for the last 3 years where I'd rather go with something new than keep making the same decisions to play guys that are going to let you down because mentally they don't have it, and ability-wise, it doesn't shine through because of their stage fright. So for me, I'm glad he's made the decision. I hope to see more of this in the future, even if we need to bring up, someone else. I don't want Dyer to be brought up. I want Dyer to be brought up. When you look at Ashley Phillips, he does have a bit of championship experience behind him with Blackburn. I think he played 11 senior appearances for them, plus some Carabao Cup games. Highly ranked in and around the England setup. And for me, Sean, I think, it just comes down to a question of, does this kid have the mentality to do it when it matters, or whether he doesn't? Because the under-21s have been training and playing the exact same way as the senior team do. So therefore, it's not a matter of him having to go up and get adjusted to different ways or anything like that. He literally goes up. He knows the way. He knows the system. He knows what's expected. Right. It's just about, can he deliver, up at that level.
That is a massive question mark.
I'm happy we take it.
It's a massive question mark whether or not he's ready yet. Like, there's a difference between playing against, an 18-year-old in championship level under 21s to coming up and playing against Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard in 2 weeks' time, right? Which might happen if there's an injury to Romero or Van der Ven in the international break. So we will see. Listen, I'm on paper, I love what you're saying. On paper, I share your principles rather, about giving people chances, and also, looking at players and say, you've had enough time, you've had enough chances, and where is your accountability, and how do you handle the pressure? And the answer is always negative of late with Eric Dyer. I would say last season was a massive drop off, and you've got people generally have recency bias. The season before, when we qualified for the Champions League, Eric Dyer didn't have a shocking season. I thought he was very competent and responsible for us finishing the 4th best team in the most difficult league in the world. So I think that I do stand by that confidence is an issue, and I think that his form is terrible. class is permanent. I'm not saying he has the class, but his general standard is higher than it was last season and what we've seen of late. What I do find interesting, though, is, and we haven't seen Dyer play this system. He's the only person who was the senior member of the squad who hasn't had any minutes. And Ange Postecoglou made a point of saying, when am I going to, if I don't play them, like the excuse for Tuesday night against Fulham was, well, I need to see these players. How can I judge them if I haven't seen them? And with Eric Dyer, he has gone out of his way to not only not give him a chance, but not even put him on the bench. And to me, I'm not sure what that's about. Why Eric Dyer specifically? Has there been something that's happened in the background? Has Eric Dyer done something, said something, behaved in a certain way that's come out that, maybe he is that guy that's causing toxicity in the background of under previous managers. He is the guy who's whispering in ears saying, don't do this or do that, causing problems. Maybe Ange has got wind of that and said, oh, you're trouble, bro. You're getting frozen out straight away. And on that basis, if the decision to promote Ash Phillips is not entirely based on merit, but more based on some sort of disliking of Eric Dyer on a personal level, then that, whilst maybe justifiable for the good energy and chemistry of the team, it doesn't necessarily support the idea that Ash Phillips is a more competent defender than Eric Dyer. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, look, I fully understand, and it's a good argument you make. However, look, I fear, obviously something's gone on, right? It doesn't take a rocket science to work that out. Something's gone on between Ange and Dyer. That's why Dyer is sort of, not being used, not being pulled in and around the squad. But also, I think it stems from Eric Dyer believing he was going to be first choice in that defence. And Ange Postecoglou has come in and said, no. You're deluded, mate. It ain't happening. You've got to earn your place. And I think Eric Dyer is sulked about it, threw his toys out the pram. He sulked when Jose Mourinho dropped him towards the end. And when Jose Mourinho sacked, Eric Dyer came out and he said, well, he just stopped playing me. But he didn't address why Mourinho stopped playing him. That season, he made a massive error against Liverpool, massive error against West Ham, massive error against Chelsea before Jose Mourinho dropped them. I think there was and also he said at the end of the season, I don't understand what all the noises around me. I think I've had a good season. So everyone else is telling him he's had a bad season. And he's standing there saying, no, I've had a good season. If I was a manager, I'd get tick at him. I'd lose it pretty quickly with him. You can't teach someone that's deluded, that thinks they're at a certain level when they're not. All it takes is Ange Postecoglou to pull up most of last year's games. He's got a fair few mistakes in them and just say, look, this is the exact reason why you're not playing. On the ball, how many times did you give it away? And defensively, you don't know what you're doing. And I think that's where it stems from. That Dyer thinks he's at one level, Ange Postecoglou thinks he's at another, and I think they've butted heads over it. Then you go down to leadership. He's gone out of the leadership group, and I think, again, Dyer hasn't been happy about. And I guarantee you, Dyer's sitting there right now going, oh, I'm being railroaded, rather than taking accountability on how he got there. The fact that he's had 3 years of football, first team football, a lot of it injury free, even if you want to I make the case he wasn't good enough on the Pochettino, but some people would say he was injured. So he's had 3 years injury free and he hasn't took that opportunity. But the guy thinks he's at one level and he's always been like that. He's absolutely deluded. So for me, I think it takes balls from Ange Postecoglou. I think he's looked at it and I think he says, okay, I look at Ashley Phillips. He can play out from the back. He can defend. And I think he's on a similar level to Dyer. And I'd rather go at him than someone like Eric Dyer, who's cost previous managers their jobs.
And that's absolutely fine. And if that is the justification, then and the truth, then I'm all for it. But if there is any element of spite that is baked into the decision, then that's a concern that he's choosing an inferior or someone who's not quite ready yet over someone who might not be great, but on paper and in practice has more experience. Like I say, I'm not sitting here defending Eric Dyer. I'm really not. I'm playing devil's advocate. You know what I do? I like, I always like to sort of see position the other side of the argument. I don't want Eric Dyer at the club. I would love to have seen Eric Dyer go to Galatasaray rather than Sanchez. If I'm entirely honest, if you had to lose one, lose him. But it is what it is. I just wonder what the motivation is, whether it's purely based on whether he thinks that Ash Phillips is the best man for the job, or whether there's something else going on. And the fact that he never gave Eric Dyer any minutes at all, despite making a big deal of saying, how am I going to judge these players until I've seen them? To me, I think lends me to lean into the idea that maybe something else has happened, and probably all the things that you're saying, Dave, that Eric Dyer's reaction to being dropped, reaction to being leadership sort of revocation, all of those things is probably gone down poorly with Eric Dyer. His reaction's been bad, and Ange Postecoglou's thought, you know what, you're not worth the trouble.
And just lastly on the Ange Postecoglou, I mean, the reason why I say it takes balls to do it as well, and the reason why I'm happy he's done it is because under Jose Mourinho, under Antonio Conte, you know, even though how much I sat there and complained about the guys, the rebuttal was always, well, he continues to pick them. He continues to pick them. You know, well, that won't be there for Ange Postecoglou because he won't continue to pick them. And it's just my prediction. I think you'll see an upturn of consistency and results this year, having that back line changed, even without Eric Dyer, even with bringing up Ashley Phillips, even with having to maybe use Alfie Dorrington at times. I still think we'll see an uptake in consistency of results and clean sheets rather than reverting to the likes of Sanchez and Dyer. But look,
love it.
Time will tell. Time will tell. We did have a lot more talking points, but we've already been going for nearly, it's already been going for half an hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to call it a day on this one. We will be going over to Shawnee's to record one as well. So make sure you leave here and get over there for that. We'll be talking about complete different things. So make sure you get over and check that out. But Shawnee, anything else you want to say to the Irish Hotspur adoring fans of yours?
No, big up. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the comment section below. Hope everyone is happy, and that we got 2 weeks to go basically until the next time Tottenham play. So it's going to be we're going to be scraping the barrel for content topics over the next 2 weeks, Dave. But looking forward to doing it with you, mate, as often as possible.
Look, it's going to be fun if we can keep drawing half an hour out of these conversations like we did. I mean, we're on to a good one. But everybody, please let us know your comments below. A lot of things to digest there. Does it stink of incompetence by the club about sort of letting Sanchez go? Or was it a gamble worth taking by Daniel Levy, who sold him anyway? Also, on bringing up Ashley Phillips over Eric Dyer, and has there been a bust-up between Eric Dyer and Ange Postecoglou somewhere along the way? Please let us know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. Plus, like Sean said, it's going to be scarce for the next 2 weeks. So what you want to hear us discuss, put in below, and we'll also use them as talking points and discussions. No better time to do it than over an international break. Make sure you hit the like, and then once you finish this, straight over to Spurs Talk Show to check out the other one that we've done with complete different talking points. As always, come on, you Spurs. In the big hands we trust. We never stop.